folks, sorry I'm not in school today. I hope you're being good for the sub, okay? And all the other teachers that are in the room, I hope you're behaving. I didn't want to fall too far behind. I know that hopefully at this point you've gone over your homework. You looked at the graphs, okay? I had a couple overheads for those. And you saw if you were making mistakes. Remember, slope, the number attached to the x, is a ratio of rise over run, so either up or down, depending on if it's positive or negative. And then the next dot would be side to side, depending on if it's positive or negative. Positive, you go forward. Negative, you'd be going backward. Okay, so remember that slope. And then our y-intercept, our b value, okay, is going to be where you put your first point. If it's positive on the y-axis, you put it on that positive value of y. If your b was negative, or if it was minus a number, you'd put it below. We also had some of those funky lines, vertical lines. Those were ones where we had x equals some number, and that vertical line is going through the x value at that number. And then we had other lines that are horizontal. They have slopes of 0, which means our x isn't there. It's y equals a number, and the line's going to be hitting your y-intercept at whatever value that number was in the equation. Okay? So quick review on that. Hopefully you're feeling all right. If you're still struggling, we're going to still be practicing it intermittently, okay? But you need to be checking in with myself, Mrs. Shahada, or maybe even asking Mrs. Buchanan if she's available in class to help you too, okay? We have some really smart women that can give you a hand, okay? So use us as resources. We are going to move on into our flip book and finish taking notes. Now, some of you already have the notes. Maybe you copied them down from the other flipped lesson, but I want to still go over them with you. So if this is your flip book, the half that we haven't done is the half that is here. Okay, we've already done this half. We graphed our little lines, and we reviewed it last class. But now we're going to think about it in reverse. Okay, so instead of having a slope and having a y-intercept and plotting our points and making our graph with our slope pattern, we are going to look at a graph that already exists. We're going to identify important parts of it, and then we're going to take those parts and put them back into an equation. So we're actually writing the equation of the graph versus taking an equation and making a graph. It's the exact opposite. So if you don't have one of these, I do have extra blank copies in back with the sub. You can feel free to ask her politely, okay, for a copy. If not, you can use line paper, graph paper, or hopefully you have this because this is good notes, okay? It's a good resource. So pull that out onto your desk. The title should be on it that says from a graph. So that means we are writing an equation from a graph, okay? Equation from a graph. Okay? Working in the opposite direction. We have a graph. What's the equation going to be? So before I really go over that, let's think about it. Okay? When we see an equation, there are two important pieces that we need to know before we graph it. Hopefully in your head you're thinking right now that those two important pieces, one of them is the slope. Okay? We need to know what the slope of our line is. What is our m value? And we look at that from y equals mx plus b. Okay, we don't need to write this down. I'm just getting you thinking. Okay, so what is my slope value? In an equation, I just pull it out. Okay, I'm not going to just be able to magically know it by just glancing at this graph. I'm going to actually have to do some thinking, but it's really not that hard. Okay, after the slope, the other important thing I need to know is my b, and my b is the y-intercept of my graph, where the line hits the y-axis. Okay, so these are the two things that when I have to make my graph, I have to find from my equation. So these are going to be the two things that I'm going to look at the graph and identify and then just plug into this. Okay, we're going to do two examples together. I'm going to write and draw what these two graphs are right now on the board here so that you can see it and I don't have to just do a nasty little sketch. Okay, I'll be right back. 1 minute. And ta-da! The two graphs that are in your flipbook are now on the board. This is the top one and this is the bottom one. Okay, my graphs are a little bit smaller. I don't have them go all the way out to 10 in each direction, so you got to bear with me. Now, the first thing you're going to do, I'm going to write my steps here, but really you're going to want to start writing them here. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at your graph. Okay, you want to notice a couple things. Is my slope positive, going up left to right, or is it negative, going down left to right? Maybe it has a slope of 0, or maybe it's undefined, right? Vertical line. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to gather some information. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the important pieces. The easiest thing to find first is to find your b. Okay? And remember, the b is found where your line hits the hits the y-axis, okay? And we're just going to choose that y value. So for example here, if we need to find our b, I'm going to look, here's my y-axis, it hits right here. Look at your graph, it's the exact same graph. Hopefully you're telling me the answer in your head right now. By looking at it, you're like, oh, the y-intercept is at 2, it's at 2. It's at a positive 2, okay? The next part's a little harder. We need to find our slope, okay? Find our m value. And once we find this m and the b, we just are going to plug them in. But finding the m's a little bit more tricky. To find the m, you're going to do a couple things. First thing you're going to do is you're going to pick 2 points that are on your line, 2 solutions that are nice. Now, looking at this, I could choose a lot of different things, okay? I could choose things that are in between bars, but I don't want to do that. I want to choose coordinate pairs that are nice whole numbers. So, for example, if I'm looking at this, one of them is my y-intercept. It crosses those lines nicely. Then if I follow this down, it looks like it might hit there at 2.5, but it's not. I don't really know. It could be 2.6, 2.8. I'm not going to guess, okay? I'm going to choose coordinate pairs that cross our lines nicely. So if I look right here, and you kind of have this dot drawn on yours also, at 4, -1, it appears to cross those grid lines really, really nice, okay? So that's what I'm going to use as my second point. I'm going to pick my 2 points that I want to use, okay? After I've chosen them, I'm going to draw a step. Some people can kind of do this in their heads, but why the heck not just draw it on your graph? I'm going to draw a step just like if I was climbing steps outside or inside, okay? Now, if you look at this step, it has a rise and it has a run, hence slope, okay? Rise over run. So after that, I'm going to make my ratio of rise over run. But you need to remember that there could be negative values here, okay? In either direction, if you went down, well, my step, really, I could look at it as going down, but I'm not going to, okay? Left to right, my whole slope is negative, so one of these 2 numbers in this example has to be negative. The way I go about doing this is I always start by looking at wherever it is, my furthest point to the right. And I'm going to count my rise, okay? Oops, I put my's. Rise, okay? And my rise here is going to be up 1, 2, 3. That's how tall my stair is. My rise is 3 over my run, okay? And run is going left or right. I went up. It was up, so it was a positive 3. Now look at this. My run is 1, 2, 3, 4. But did I go forwards 4? No, I went backwards 4. When I go backwards 4, that means that's actually a negative, okay? Now, I can't simplify this by popping the negative on the outside. I would say 3 divided by 4, well, I know that's not going to be, a nice number, so I'm not going to do anything. It's already simplest form, 3/4, okay? But a positive divided by a negative means I should pull out that negative in front, okay? So this is my m value, and this is my b value. Now, the last step here, okay, the fourth and last thing to do is just plug in your m and b into y equals mx plus b. Okay, you just plug it right into that equation. So my equation for this, okay, is now going to be, I'm going to write it up here. I'm actually going to erase that to make sure it doesn't get cut off, okay? Y equals, that doesn't change. Instead of putting mx, like here, I know my m is -3/4. So I plugged it in. Now I put my x back there, plus b. I can keep it a plus because my b is positive, so I'm just going to put +2. This equation is this line. So let's recap. First thing I did, I looked at my graph, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, it's a line. Woohoo, all right. I noticed right after that what my y-intercept is, where my line hits the y-axis to find my b, and I wrote it. b equals, it hits the y at +2, +2. After that, I had to find my slope, which is a little more involved. I picked 2 points that crossed my grid lines nicely, okay? That was very nice coordinate pairs. After that, I drew a step, boom, boom, and then I counted my rise and run. Remembering that it could be backwards or down, so one of my numbers or both my numbers could be negative depending on how you look at it, okay? After that, I simplified the slope by putting the negative on the outside, and then I just plugged them into y equals mx plus b. I put my m here, I put my b where it belongs, and I'm done, okay? That's really not that hard. Y-intercepts, that takes like 10 seconds. The slope, you gotta be careful. You gotta slow down when you're counting it. You gotta think positives and negatives. But again, it's not super challenging. So right now, I want you to take a look at this second graph. Okay, I know that you cannot do this because you're watching a flip lesson and I can't really tell. I want you to look at it, and in your head, you're thinking, what does b equal? What does m equal? What's my y-intercept and what's my slope? Okay? What do you think? You should know the b. All right, looking over there. Let me even tilt this a little. Ready? Whoop, okay. Looking over here, it hits the y-axis at 0. So my b value is going to be 0. After I do that, I'm going to pick 2 points. I'm going to pick my y-intercept as one of them. And this crosses really nicely a lot of times. It's like every single box, it seems to look kind of nice. Okay? All of these are points I could choose. There's a lot of obvious solutions here. Now that I've done that, I'm going to draw a step. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to draw a step just to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to choose one that I know I'm going to have to simplify. So I'm going to go up and do this. I'm going to do my step kind of big. You can do your step as big or as small as you want. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. After that, I'm going to find my rise and run. So this time I'm not going to start way over here on the right. Okay? I'm going to start at this one on the left because I want to rise and then run. So my rise, I went up 1, 2, 3 boxes. So my rise again is 3. And my run is 1, 2, 3 forward, meaning it's a positive 3. Now I ask myself, 3 divided by 3, can I simplify that? Yes. Yes, I can. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So my slope is actually 1. Okay? That's it. I don't have to do 1 over 1. I don't have to worry about anything. If I can simplify it to a whole number, I'll simplify it to a whole number. No big deal. Okay? But I'm not going to ever simplify my slope to a decimal. Because if anything, a fraction helps us graph it, right? So we don't want to take the fraction away and put a decimal, which will make it a lot harder to graph. Okay? So, slope is 1. Y-intercept is 0. I'm just going to plug those into this. So it's still going to have y equals. Instead of mx, I'm going to plug in my m1, okay, right next to my x value, 1x. And then my b, I would do plus b or minus b if it was negative. I'm going to put plus 0. Now this technically is my answer, okay, but that actually can be simplified down a couple different ways. For starters, do we really need a 1 in front of our x? We've talked about this when solving equations. You don't, okay? I could just have y equals x plus 0. But then again, you could look at that and say anything plus 0, that doesn't change it, okay? If it doesn't change it, then we don't even need it there. So really, we don't even need that. We could have just y equals x. And even though this seems weird, this is our equation, okay? Y equals x, that means our slope, invisible here, is 1. And our number added on the end of this, our b value, is technically 0. So that means I would start at 0. And I do 1 over 1 as my slope, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, and so on and so forth, okay? So writing equations, you look at it, okay? You pick out your y-intercept, you put b equals that, so you know. You don't get it flip-flop with the m. Then you put m equals, draw your little step between 2 nice points, count your rise, count your run, make your ratio, simplify if you need to, and then plug in your pieces into our slope-intercept form right there, okay? I am expecting, when I come in on Monday, that these notes are finished. But this is not your homework. This is your classwork. If you were with me right now, if we were in the classroom together, this would be done. It's 10 minutes. 10 minutes and like 20-something seconds right now that I've been on video with you. So, now you are going to do different homework. One side of the homework is like what you had last night. The other side of the homework is a whole page where it's already graphed for you. The lines are already there waiting. All you need to do is find the m, find the b, and it asks you for that, and write the equation. If it doesn't say m equals b equals, you should write it. because you know you need to understand what those two pieces are and plug them in as your last step, okay? So, this flipbook Monday is done. The two-sided sheet, ask the sub for it, is done on Monday. And we're going to go over the two-sided sheet. We're going to take our time, and then those pink sheets around the classroom, that's what we're going to be doing to make sure you know what you need to before we move on for the next class, okay? So please, I know I'm not there to hound you, but I shouldn't have to, okay? Get your stuff done, do your best, okay? And really work on that homework, okay? I will see you on Monday. I hope you all have a nice weekend, and please still be good for the sub. That would be awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Bye.